Good morning, everybody. Welcome to everybody on the YouTube and those on the Jitsi video conference platform. It is wonderful to have our 9th edition of this webinar series on logistics in different aspects. Today's webinar is on an important topic of logistics in armed forces being ready for all scenarios. In fact, in modern market economies are supposed to work through the invisible hand of market. But unknown to all is this invisible hand is the invisible hand of the logistics and supply chains. It is said that the corporations and countries compete on the supply chains and their logistics. And these are invisible to every one of us unless there is a disruption. For example, we can see this very clearly in our hurry to organize oxygen supply logistics during this pandemic, rise of the pandemic. So similarly, unknown to many of the civilians is the whole organization structure of the defense of the country. Defense of the country prior to this introduction of the television and also the social media, it was almost unknown to us. So though the social media and the TV has given us exposure, but the internal nitty-gritties are still very, very unknown to us. And unknown to the defense forces itself is their logistics, and because the soldier is only worried about his availability of rations and what is happening behind that. So what we are looking at is a black box of logistics, which is again wrapped in another black box of defense. And it is these two black boxes that we are trying to open up in this small webinar and give you a small preview. It is not something which we will be able to do substantially, but we have lined up eminent personnel from the defense sectors and also the vice chief of has consented to give the inaugural address, and I hope you will make a lot good use of this webinar. So the overall structure of this webinar will be in the first 7-8 minutes. We'll introduce you about the CILT, that is the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and then this will be followed by introduction on the webinar overall structure, and then about the webinar series. Then we'll go into the webinar proper. Sadi, can you make the presentation about the CILT? So Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport is an international body constituted in 1919 after the First World War. Again, we are talking of armed force logistics, and the body was constituted because in the First World War, the logistics that were organized, at least the British were not happy with it, and they wanted to develop a professional body looking at these logistics. And and it received its Royal Charter in 1925. And in the Indian chapter was organized in 1988, and it has members both from corporate world and the civil world. You have to go 2-3 slides before. And as CILT India, there is a lot of functions that CILT India carries out. First is the policy level functions. So it coordinates with a lot of ministries and other bodies in developing the logistics sector. So it is recognized by the logistics division of the Ministry of Commerce for its inputs, and it has a memorandum of understanding with this logistics body. And then in the implementation side, it also interacts regularly with the various industry players. Again, logistics sector is such that it has a wide range of industry players covering the air, shipping, road, rail, and then the intermediaries, warehousing. So whatever thing you mention, logistics is involved, and it looks for these implementation issues and then gives the feedback for the policy formulation. And then further to it is the industries and professional bodies. And it has around 3,500 members, professional members, and around 40 corporate bodies working in this sector as members. And it also regularly conducts various training programs and also webinars and seminars. And actually, it conducts one jumbo annual exhibition and seminar, but that could not be organized this year, and even this year also we may not be able to organize both 20 and 21. But replacing that, we are organizing regular webinars, and this is the 9th webinar that we are talking about. And to join as members, we have two options. One, you can join as a regular member, life member, which costs around 18,000, and then otherwise you can join as annual member, which costs annually around 5,000. And of course, if you are representing a corporate body, you can join as a corporate member, which costs nearly around 3 lakhs. And then, and of course, corporate members do get various concessions in the training programs and the exhibitions and webinars. So this is the overall CILT activities. So this is about CILT India. CILT India, its basic activities. And now we'll just go to the webinar and finish off its overall structure. So basically, this webinar we have inaugural address, which will be we have inaugural address being delivered by the Lieutenant General Chandi Prasad Mohanty, and then we'll have talks from eminent speakers, Major General B.V. Rao and Major General Umamaheswar, more or less representing, trying to give us an overview of the Army's logistics, and then Air Vice Marshal R.P. George giving us an overview of the Air Force logistics, and then followed by it by moderated discussion, which will be mostly led by Major General Rohit Gupta, me in tow, assisting him in various other questions that are posed from the audience. So that's the overall structure of the present webinar. Next, we go to the webinar proper. Now, now I would like to introduce Vice Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Chandi Prasad Mohanty, PVSM, AVSM, SM, VSM, and Lieutenant General Chandi Prasad Mohanty is an alumnus of Rashtriya Indian Military Academy and National Defence Academy and Indian Military Academy. He holds 2 master's degrees, 1 MPhil degree, and completed courses in Higher Defence Management and National Defence College. Vice Chief is not only his battalion, brigade, division, and corps commandant in operations, but he was also extensive international military exposure. He worked as military advisor in Seychelles and commanded UN brigade in Congo. Notably, he commanded Jodhpur sub-area and Uttar Bharat area, which play vital roles in ensuring logistics to army formations in the front in operations. He was Director General Operational and Logistics and Strategic Movement, and later General Officer in Commanding in Chief in Southern Command. In summary, Lieutenant General Chandi Prasad Mohanty encapsulates a rare combination of operations and logistics skill sets. Sir, we are indeed privileged to have you for giving us inaugural address, and over to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Babu. It's indeed a pleasure addressing the webinar today. Mr. Babu, Vice President, Chartered Institute of Logistics Transport, Maj Gen Umamaheswar, distinguished panelists on this webinar, all the participants and dear friends. In fact, it is interesting and good that I am able to reconnect with some other panelists who have been my old friends, namely Marshal George, Major General B.V. Rao, and Major General Rohit Gupta. It gives me immense pleasure to deliver the inaugural address of this webinar, Logistics in Armed Forces, being ready for all scenarios. I'm deeply conscious of the fact that the attendees today belong to the premier professional body for supply chain management, logistics, and transport industry of this country, widely acknowledged to be the authoritative view for communication to the government, industry, and community on the science and arts of logistics and transport. I'm also extremely happy to note that the theme of today's webinar aims to derive lessons from the logistics management in the armed forces. Having headed the operational logistics and the strategic movement verticals of the Indian Army as DGOL, I wish to share my experience with the audience and also seek suggestions from you during the interactive session. As you know, Indian Army is 1.3 million strong, and making it operational ready for all the scenarios involves situations ranging from peace to no war, no peace, to limited conflict, and to nuclear war across the whole spectrum of the conflict. Logistics will make the difference in war, since this is going to decide the tempo of the operations. Unlike in the civil arena, logistics and supply chain management is more complex in the armed forces owing to the inhospitable terrain and the far-flung border areas. The process itself involves designing and development to suit the individual arms and services requirements, which also includes manufacture by the domestic industry, including DPSUs, the procurement, storage, distribution, maintenance, exploitation, repair, salvage, disposal, and even recuperation. It involves multifarious agencies and different arms and organs of the armed forces and government, as well as the civilian agencies. The transportation of these stores is another facet which involves movement of men, material, armament, ammunition, supply, FOL, that is fuel, oil and lubricant, and the rations to the last deployed soldier on the front line, be it on the line of control opposite opposite Pakistan, line of actual control opposite China, or the international boundary itself. It thus involves multimodal transportation by aircrafts, trains, vehicles, animal transport, and finally porters who ferry to the last man and last post guarding our frontiers on their back. In today's context, joint warfighting is the key word for military planning. While various commonalities in the logistics exist in the three services, synergizing them by reducing the duplications and redundancies will lead not only to the savings, but also to the increased functional efficiency. Further, integrating them with existing national civilian logistics resources will be a major battle-winning factor. We have come a long way in this venture. Yet, opportunities still exist in orchestrating our endeavors towards seamless research and development, the production, optimization of all supplies, then the multimodal transportation to ensure uninterrupted conduct of the operations on land, sea, and air. The requirement of nurturing the jointness and integration, particularly in the evolution of joint logistic structures, has also been accorded priority. Establishment of the JLNs, that is the Joint Logistics Nodes, recently is the first such step in this direction, with many others to follow in near future. At the national level, integrated national logistics power through a national logistics policy is also being deliberated. We as a nation cannot afford to divorce national logistics from military logistics, especially when war or the major crisis in this effect is a national effort. As we look to enhance the capabilities of our armed forces to meet the dual challenges on our western and the northern borders, we are deeply conscious of the fact that it is with technology alone that we can prepare ourselves for all these scenarios. Accordingly, the incorporation of the automation to reduce the inventory, artificial intelligence for better predictive maintenance, blockchain for more efficient logistics supply chain management, fuel cells for energy management, biotechnology for improving the habitat, etc., are some of the issues that are being concurrently looked into to evolve and transform into a future-ready 21st century armed forces of the Union of India. If I may share my vision of operational logistics in a few lines, I would say that it has to be completely networked to connect the frontline soldiers and all the service provider with click of a button. To do so, it has to be modeled on the telemarketing on the lines of Amazon, Flipkart, and big basket, etc. A frontline commander in the thick of the fast-paced battle of today on any front cannot afford to contact multiple service providers, overcoming the tedious process of documentation and delivery. All the services such as food, fuel, warlike stores, weapons, ammunition, the casualty evacuation, medical services, repair, and recovery of the vehicles and the equipment have to be integrated into one large web. It would involve multiple warehousing facilities, transportation by land, air, and sea, establishment of several number of workshops, hospitals with round-the-clock facility and transparency. But we must bear it in mind that given the dynamics of the warfare, security of information, men and material is going to be a major challenge which will have to be overcome. Our adversary's capability to penetrate this is well known, particularly our northern adversary, and thus will require impregnable firewalling system. Outsourcing and military trade partnership is thus likely to be the future trend in military logistics. Accountability and credibility of trade to consistently meet the timelines and qualitative requirements will be of key importance, which I am sure the trade will live up to. Interministerial coordination will be of utmost importance, where there has to be synergy between various ministries. To say the few, the Ministry of Defence, Ministry of Road, Surface Transport and the Highways, Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Civil Aviation, and Ministry for Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution to organize the supply, transportation, and delivery to various points. Today, I am very happy to see that the Chartered Institute for Logistics and Transport has assembled a distinguished panel for this webinar, including serving officers from the Indian Army and Indian Air Force who can share their best practices and learn from the domain experts in the civil arena. I sincerely hope that this webinar will enrich all the participants and lead us to developing some solutions for major challenges in the defense logistics. Well, before I end, I would like to say that this webinar has been organized at an apt time. Today, the nation, and particularly in Delhi, we all are fighting a war. The war is against an unheard of, dangerous and contagious virus. The country has come together and put in place all the logistics, infrastructure and resources to overcome this mounting challenge posed by the COVID-19. As always, we the armed forces are pitching in our bit by augmenting the health infrastructure, mobilizing our health resources, and providing air effort as well as the medical and allied support in terms of men and material. We are using our unique skill sets to fill up the critical voids wherever and whenever called for. I am confident that the nation's effort towards tackling the pandemic will help defeat this virus in no time, and we will emerge victorious. Thank you, gentlemen. Godspeed and good luck. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. It's indeed a wonderful inaugural speech. You have given us a lot of mandate, both in terms of the internal logistics, intermediate and inter-wing coordination and inter-ministerial coordination. And also bringing it in the context of COVID pandemic is very, very timely. And thank you, sir, for your wonderful inaugural speech. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we go on to the webinar speakers. Now, next speaker is Major General B.V. Rao. So Major General B.V. Rao, PVSM, VSM retired. He retired recently. Former Additional Director General, Equipment Management. He is alumnus of Science School, Korukonda, followed by National Defence Academy and Indian Military Academy. Then he did his BTech in Civil Engineering, MTech in Structures, MSc and MPhil in Defence Studies. He also completed higher and senior command courses at Army War College, Mau, and staff course at Defence Services College, Wellington. He commanded at various levels, subunit, unit, and brigade level. He was chief engineer of corps in Sikkim and commanded the insurgency forces in Jammu and Kashmir involved in counter-terrorist operations. Held various staff positions at different levels, and the last being in the integrated headquarters of Ministry of Defence, Army as Additional Director General of Equipment Management. He was also an instructor in Indian military training team in Bhutan. And of course, he has his extensive experience in provisioning and supplying of provisions across all military warehouses and military depots. And it is in this context he is invited as for the panel. So over to you, Major General B.V. Rao.
Thank you, Dr. Ravibabu. I'm indeed privileged to be part of this webinar and speaking on the logistics in the armed forces being ready for all scenarios. I will be speaking on the army part of the logistics. In fact, we are divided into two parts. The first part I will be taking on, and the second part will be taken on by General Umamaheswar, my colleague. As I understand that this is the first seminar on the armed forces, logistics in armed forces by the CILT. So hence, it may be appropriate to introduce the basic differences between the in logistics between the armed forces and the civil arena. More or less, to a large extent, this has been alluded to by the Vice Chief of the Army Staff in his inaugural address. But I will be a bit more deliberate and bring it out a little more clearly. And later on, I will take on the first part of the logistics in the army per se. The difference in concept of logistics in civil and defense. As you know, the logistics in the army are basically meant for supporting the war fighting capabilities of the Indian Army. That means the fighting soldier who is on the border, both during peace and war, and those training for war, and for any other emergencies to be undertaken for the country per se, have to be all ready at all times. So what are his requirements? His requirements are his weapon systems, the equipment that he needs, the sustenance that is required for him by way of rations, vehicles, the FOL for the vehicles and equipment, the ammunition and missiles required for manning the operational systems, the weapon systems, the complicated electronic systems and communication systems like the radars and other multi-layered communication capabilities. The infrastructure that is required is generally created by the army itself in the border areas by the Director General Border Roads, now of course ably aided by the Ministry of Surface Transport. While this is the requirement, but what's the major difference? It has to be an assured logistics to be delivered in time, every hour, every minute, 24 hours of the day and 365 days of the year, whether we are in war or not. That is one major difference between defense logistics and civil logistics. Civil logistics can be item specific, chain specific, transport specific, but here it has to be integrated for all the requirements that I have mentioned. It has to be well in time, meaning it has to reach much before the requirement so that the fighting soldier does not look backwards when he is facing the enemy. It has to be flexible to cater for any disruptions. Disruptions can be by weather, by enemy action. So he has to have that kind of flexibility, whether he holds extra logistic requirement on ground or an alternative means of supplying the logistics if there is a breakage in the logistic chain. as the Vice Chief has brought out, the stocking for this requirement, whether when there is a breakage due to operations, weather, and supply disruptions. Supply disruptions may not be only because of operational and weather reasons. It can be also because there is a breakage in the industry behind. Some raw material has not reached, or some country has imposed a ban on supplies, like you heard recently. The vaccine raw materials are not reaching the Serum Institute of India, due to which the Covishield production is lessened. That is also a disruption. So we need to cater for that kind of thing, which means that if army has to be successful, in the sense that there is no loser in war, war has to be won. That is the aim of the war. So it has to be a very, very assured type of logistics in the armed forces. And as you all know, history is replete with the various wars being fought and won, or even being lost because of logistics. Like the Vice Chief was alluding to, the logistics remain invisible till the time there is no problem. Even when there is a win in a war, or whenever there is a successful conduct of operation, people may or may not notice the kind of logistics that went into it for the success of that operation. But definitely it will get highlighted if there is a failure, and that failure is mainly attributed to breakage in logistic chain. What I mean to say is, you can win war with all the bravery, but you can definitely not win the war even if you are brave or everything is perfect at the weapon system side. But if there is a breakage in logistics, you cannot. If you do not have the fuel or the ammunition or the rations, we are definitely likely to fail. So that is one major difference. Now, coming to how do we ensure this fail-proof logistics in the armed forces? The fail-proof armed force logistics are assured in the armed forces by various agencies supporting the armed forces. In our country, we have the DRDO, that is the Defense Research Development Organization, the Director General Quality Assurance, the Ordnance Factory Board, which manufactures a lot of weapon systems and equipment and clothing for the armed forces, the DPSUs, the Defense Public Sector undertakings like the Bharat Electronics Limited, Bharat Earth Movers Limited, ECIL, the Indian Telephone Industries, and such like many other DPSUs which support us. Thereafter, the armed forces by themselves are organized into a kind of organization which delivers these logistics very efficiently. And how does it do? For example, in the army is organized with a headquarters at Delhi. It's called the army headquarters, headed by the Chief of the Army Staff. And under him, there are 7 commands. 6 commands are operational commands, and 1 is a training command. These 6 commands are Northern Command, Eastern Command, Western Command, Southern Command, Central Command, and Southwestern Command, looking after a particular portion of our external border and an internal area also, geographically. And within these commands, we have 2 lines, 2 verticals. One is called Peace Establishment Vertical, and another is the Field Establishment Vertical. The Peace Establishment Vertical are more or less static and form a grid all over the country. They are divided under these command headquarters as area headquarters covering 2 to 3 states, sub-area headquarters generally covering every odd state of the country, and under these sub-areas are the institutions or the depots or the laboratories, workshops, or storage depots, ammunition depots are all located in these areas, which manufacture, supply, store, transport the requirements to forward areas. This is the peace vertical. Coming to the field vertical are mainly the ones who use these logistics provided by these peace grid. They are the core headquarters, headed by a Lieutenant General. Below it are 2-3 divisions under one corps, headed by a Major General, consisting about 15,000 troops. Then there are brigades under these divisions, and a number of units under the brigades. All these also have integrated logistic units, which I will cover a little later, which provide close support logistic systems to these fighting formations. These formations, both during peace and war, use these logistics efficiently. During war, these units mobilize and move using the various modes of transport, which my friend and colleague General Umamaheswar will cover a little later. So as the Vice Chief has already said, I'm not going into detail what all do we require. For sustenance in the army, we require the complete weapon systems and the complete system of ammunition and missiles. I'm giving you in the order of priority. Then the fuel, oil and lubricants that are required to run these systems, the communication systems for manning these, the manpower which mans these systems need to be fully geared up with proper clothing, equipment, including protective equipment, specialist clothing in areas like the Siachen and the high altitude areas. The transport, we have integral transport as well as we have outside transport which we use. This also needs to be provided, and these are used for logistics. Again, will be covered by General Umamaheswar a little later. The maintenance of these vehicles and equipment and weapon systems is also undertaken internally by the army itself. That is another aspect of the logistics. The complete management of these vehicles, equipment, and various items, which are almost totaling about 6 lakhs in quantum. Imagine, from a pin to a tank or an helicopter, we have 6 lakhs items in the inventory of the Indian Army. So all these have to be managed. So how do we do it? Just before that, to conclude the first part of the thing, to say that this is the basic difference between the logistics in civil and defense. In fact, the defense itself is a mini world. That means everything that is there outside is also there within the armed forces. In addition, we have the systems and the ammunition and missiles. So how are we organized and how do we execute these logistics in armed forces? We have to use a language which is easily understandable by you. I can say that we have the process of the procedure and the process for providing the logistics, and the systems that operate these procedures and process for providing the logistics. The procedure is, whenever an item is procured for the first time, Army prepares what is called the General Staff Qualitative Requirements. That is, what kind of equipment do you require? How do you procure it? First, you prepare a prototype, carry out trials, 1, 2, 3 in various different types of terrain that we have, and then procure it in large numbers. And when you procure it in large numbers and you have to distribute it all over the country, you have to have the equipment backup system for it and sustain it. And subsequently, whenever there is a deficiency over the years, we procure it again, and that will be in the revenue system. So we have two systems of procurement: capital procurement and revenue procurement. Capital procurement is first time and huge capital outlay. Revenue is for repetition and for sustaining. Complete rations, FOL, transportation, medicines, expendables, and hygiene chemicals are all from the revenue head. For these two things, we have two systems called the capital procurement procedure, that is the defense procurement procedure, and the defense procurement manual. These are all available online. Those of you who are interested in getting into the defense procurement can access. Now, coming to the systems that are required. The systems that we have in the armed forces for providing logistics are, I have given you two organizations earlier. One, the peace type of a system, and the field, which hook on to each other and depend on each other. But within these, we have an integrated systems for providing each line of the logistics. First, I come to the Army Service Corps. This corps is responsible for providing supplies and rations, fuel, oil, and lubricants. They also provide the aviation fuel for the helicopters operating within the army, and also to Air Force whenever the Air Force comes into the operations with the army, especially for the Air Force helicopters. Hygiene and chemicals to maintain the hygiene conditions all over the cantonments and in the operational areas. They man the complete transport systems, the vehicles. We have vehicles two types. One is called the first line and second line transport. First line transport is held by the units themselves for their immediate use. It contains both light vehicles like jeep, jongas, cars, then the medium-sized vehicles of capacities of 3 ton, 5 ton, 7 ton, and 15 tons. The second line vehicles are the ones which, in addition to the first line, provide the augment the transport requirement of the units whenever there is an additional requirement for transporting goods or for mobilization or for ammunition or the fuel, oil, and lubricants. For this Army Supply Corps is organized into various types of depots. Depots means these depots are the ones which are in those static establishments which I mentioned in the areas and sub-areas. These are called Army Supply Depot. This Army Supply Depot procures the rations and supplies and the FOL. Petroleum depot and petroleum depots are also there. They procure from the civil agencies, either the public sector undertakings or by contract from the civil contractors. They store and transport it to the field units which are in their own chain. Those are called ASC battalions. The ASC battalions are authorized to those field formations like the corps, the divisions, and the brigades. So this ASC has two types of units: those which are static, which come under those area headquarters; those which are of the field type, which are on war establishment and move along with the units for war, or ASC battalions, transport battalions. We also have what is called the animal transport battalions. We have some dog units also for the obvious duties of protection, detection, and for supporting the frontline operations. The next corps that is there, next system that we have is the Army Ordnance Corps. As I mentioned, this is the organization which manages the 6 lakh type of inventory. They are responsible for complete revenue procurement and receive the items from the capital procurement, distribute to the units, inventory management of the complete spares, their arms, ammunition, and missiles. All these are held on the initial charge of these. They further distribute to the entire Indian Army. They are divided into a number of central ordnance depots. There, you must have heard of Ordnance Depot Dehu Road, Ordnance Depot Mumbai, Ordnance Depot Fulgaon. Like that, we have 9 central ordnance depots. These come under those static units like areas and sub-areas. Thereafter comes the field ordnance units called the ammunition depots, the field ordnance depots, the div ordnance depots. These are all integral to those field formations who receive the goods from the central ordnance depots, or if the items are such, they can procure directly from the market based on the procurement procedures. Coming to the EME, electrical and mechanical engineers, these units are responsible for complete maintenance of the Indian Army equipment, including the helicopters held by the Indian Army. They are responsible at various levels to provide the repair cover to the equipment of the Indian Army and the weapon systems. They provide the unit level repairs called field repairs. Then they provide at the a little higher echelon level where specialist repair is required, and at the Army headquarter level, that is where these peace areas are located, they provide base overhaul and upgrades to the Indian Army equipment whenever that is required because of the developments in technology. So we have Army based workshops all over the country in various parts of the country, looking after the entire particular equipment. Like for example, for the guns, The Army base workshop is in Jabalpur. For tanks, the Army base workshop is in Delhi. So we have these in Pune in that manner. Next, we have the military hospitals who treat the patients, procure the medicines, and also move the patients. These are further there in the RR hospital at Army headquarters level, command hospitals at command level, military hospitals at the area headquarters levels, field ambulance at the field level. Lastly, we have the remount and veterinary corps for treating the animal transport, and also the postal units for our own movement of our own dock and parcels. As I mentioned, all these units are organized on peace establishment or war establishments. They all provide the operational logistics together to the Indian Army both during peace and war. All the static units procure stock and supply oblique feed to these small feeder logistic units which are integral to the army. In the normal course, the proper procurement manuals are followed, but during war, special powers are invoked. Field system and war accounting system is followed, which means that budget is not a constraint during the war, but definitely during peacetime, because of our nature of our country and economy, we follow a very economic of effort. Now I hand you over to General Umamaheswar for the next part, wherein he will take on the transportation, the operational logistics, and other aspects, and certain aspects of developments in the army can be taken, and what is there for the civil industry we can take up during the moderator session. Thank you very much, Dr. Ravibabu, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you, General B.V. Rao. It's a very, very nice exposition of how Army's whole structure of logistics is organized. And now we'll go to General Umamaheswar Rao. General Umamaheswar Rao will be introduced by K. Nikhil Kumar, operations in charge in Guntakal area, railway operations in charge in Guntakal area. Over to you, Nikhil.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, sirs. It's an honor to introduce our next distinguished speaker, Major General K. Umamaheswar. Sir is a retired Major General, served Indian Army since 1982. Sir did his schooling in Sainik School, National Defence Academy, and a master's from Madras University. Sir has a rich and varied experience. During his tenure, he worked as Assistant Military Secretary and represented India in Sierra Leone as United Nations Military Observer. Sir worked as Chief Financial Officer for the 106th National Military World Games held in Hyderabad 2007. Sir worked as Deputy Director General and Additional Director General Strategic Movement, whereas he represented India in Indo-US Expert Steering Committee Group meeting at Honolulu. Sir has worked as Chief of Staff at Dakshin Bharat area. Sir has immensely contributed for Army logistics that led to foundation for speedy movement of imports and exports, self-reliance in rolling stock requirements for specific needs of Army, shifting of all three services from warrant system to e-ticketing system, and doubling the capacity of moving troops by air from snowbound areas. Sir is an avid reader. He reads 6 newspapers a day and ardent lover of Time and Economics magazines. With these words, I humbly welcome Umamaheswar sir to take the stage and share his ideas and experiences with us. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nikhil. General B.V. Rao covered the first part of the logistics chain. It shall be my endeavor to enunciate transportation and delivery of operational logistics to the soldier on the front line who is sitting in the high sea heights of the Himalayas. Army logistics enable the troops to live, move, and fight. By live, I mean provision of food, water, clothing, shelter, medical, hygiene, and chemicals. And by move, I mean movement of troops, equipment, ammunition, stores, supplies, and evacuation of medical casualties, and also the management of civilians in the border areas during wartime. By fight, I mean using weapons, armament, and ammunition. So it's a complex web of entities involved in movement. Unlike any other logistics field, this movement is accompanied by multimodal transport as brought out by the Vice Chief. First, ships, which are used to transport all material and troops and equipment across the seas for the army deployed in the islands. Second, inland water transport is used extensively for movement along the Brahmaputra Valley. Third, aircraft. Both civil and Air Force aircraft are used both during peacetime and wartime Troops and equipment are shifted from one theater to another theater to achieve surprise and thus retain flexibility. Even during peacetime, Air Force and civil chartered aircraft are used daily for movement. Fourth, trains. These are used extensively, both in peace and war. Specialized rolling stock is held by the Army. About 1,000 trains are moved every year on a routine basis. However, an unspecified number of trains are used to mobilize troops in the event of war. Army also has medical trains to move patients from the forward areas to the tertiary care hospitals in the rear. Fifth is the vehicles. Extensive network of both civil and military vehicles are used on a daily basis. Vehicles move from the airheads, rail terminus, and from depots. Bulk petroleum lorries are used for transportation of fuels. Next is the animal transport. This is used to transport all logistics in mountain areas where road infrastructure is non-existent nor feasible. Since mules can carry a maximum of 50 kgs, all bulk loads brought by the aircraft, rail, and vehicles are broken down and repacked to mule loads. The last important link are the porters. Many areas in snowbound regions are not even conducive for animal transport. Porters then carry these loads on their shoulders to reach the ultimate destination, the end user, who happens to be the soldier guarding all of us 24/7. A porter can carry a maximum of 15 to 20 kgs, depending upon the steepness of the slope, the altitude, and terrain conditions, which means all logistics, be it food, fuel, or ammunition, has to be broken down to man-portable loads. Thus, it can be appreciated that a soldier on the front line has to be given logistics under two verticals, replacement and resupply. Replacement of armament or his living shelter if it is damaged, and resupply of ammunition, fuels, water, and food. Our logistics chain is only half complete when supplies reach the end user, because the return chain is equally important. We need to return the entire packing material because they are needed again for resupply. The return chain is also used for evacuation of casualties, the return movement of civilians in the event of a mobilization. Medical logistics play a very, very important role, whether it is in peacetime or in wartime. And these medical logistics form the backbone to keep the health and spirits of the soldiers high. A soldier on the front line requiring medical attention needs to be evacuated to the best hospital in the shortest possible time. Numerous medical facilities are established along the chain to ensure this link. First is a battalion aid post where first aid is rendered. Then we have the advanced dressing station where expert clinical aid is given. Then we have the forward surgical centers where life-saving surgeries are performed. Then we have the military and the base hospitals where the patient is stabilized. And finally, the army hospital where tertiary care is provided. Personnel are evacuated in this chain, and not necessarily. They can also be airlifted from any stage depending upon the gravity of the situation. So in a nutshell, movement by varied transport involves 6 different types and none of them can be combined. It involves movement of men, it involves ammunition, fuel, food, replacement items and stores, and casualty evacuation. So this is what is the most critical aspect, and how this complex variety of logistics moving in varied array of transport ultimately reaches the soldier across the length and breadth of our country is a subject worth studying and analysis by any serious logistic professional. Since the areas of requirement are known beforehand, the Army has established an area logistic grid system in various geographic regions. The system is in place in peacetime. Of course, the stocking levels vary. Operational formations move from their peace locations to the war locations, and these entities come and attach themselves to the already existing logistic facilities. And based on the dependency, each of these facilities are stocked from mother depots and sub depots. Building up reserves and advanced stocking are the twin pillars of operational logistics to take care of international sanctions, disruptions, or an outright loss due to enemy action. Reserves are required in 4 areas: fuel, food, ammunition, and armament. After identifying daily requirement of these 4 entities in war scenario, when, as Vice Chief has alluded, 1.3 million strong army requiring food on a daily basis is humongous. So these reserves are calculated for 10 days, 30, 40, 60, 90, 120 days. And these reserves are then dispersed across many depots across the country to retain flexibility and to cater for any adverse enemy action. While fuels, ammunition, and armament have longer shelf life, food, especially fresh rations, have a limited shelf life. Since adequate food stocks are available in the country, moving these stocks in time is the key. Rail and road transport play a very major role in this. Next, I come to the important aspect of fuel, which is a major issue in Army logistics because it forms 25% by weight. 85% of our fuel requirement at the national level is imported, and 50% of the import is from the Persian Gulf. Disruptions can occur at any time. Hence,
Last 2 minutes, Uma.
Fuel requirements for 60, 90, or 120 days are stocked ab initio. The storage tanks have to be kept outside the radius and beyond the capability of enemy action. Fuel is stored both in crude as well as refined form. Protecting own supply lines and attacking the enemy's supply lines is a fundamental military strategy of war. Logistic lines are threatened by a multitude of long-range guns, missiles, and adversaries' aircraft. Air Force thus play a key role in protecting own supply lines and also attacking enemy's logistic installations to cripple our adversary. Hence, logistics to the Air Force assumes a very significant role. We have with us Air Vice Marshal George to educate us on the logistics in the Air Force.
Thank you, Uma. That's a good overview of the movement pattern that takes place on what General V.V. Rao described as the overall pattern of provisions and movement. Okay, now we'll go to Air Vice Marshal George for his exposition on the Air Force. He will be introduced by Mr. Subham Jain, in charge of operations, railway operations in Ramagundam area. Over to you, Subham.
Good morning, everyone. It is my privilege to introduce Air Vice Marshal George, RP George. Sir did his BSc Honours and Masters in Management Industries DCA and is a Certified Associate in Project Management from IPMA. Sir completed Higher Defence Management course at CDM Secunderabad with over 36 years of experience in entire spectrum of logistics and supply chain in the Indian Air Force, right from operational fields, units to air headquarters, including functional command headquarters, and also worked as Chief Instructor, Air Force Admin College. Sir is a recipient of Ati Vishish Seva Medal by the Honorable President of India for extraordinary service to the nation on 26 January 2015. This is the second highest peacetime award for defense services in the country. As Assistant Chief of Air Staff Logistics, Sir headed the Air Force logistics function and implemented a number of policy initiatives. Sir has implemented enterprise-wide resource planning solution system in Air Force, bringing nearly 175 Air Force locations onto a single platform, and it is the country's largest ERP platform. Welcome, sir, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Subham. It is indeed a privilege to be taking part in a seminar like this organized by CILT. Okay, now a warm welcome to all the participants who are available on YouTube. And some of you all may be wondering as to what are Armed Forces officers doing in a seminar on logistics. Because generally the Armed Forces officers are associated with security, when we talk of the civil industry. Let me assure the audience, armed forces, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force have some of the finest logistic professionals managing the supply chain, at times nearly at half the globe distance, efficiently and effectively to keep the weapon systems fully serviceable. Therefore, there is a bunch of highly trained professionals in the field of logistics and supply chain in the three services. It is rather unfortunate that when these professionals with so many years of experience, when they retire from the services, they are left to the civil world not to be recognized at all. May I, through the audience, may I call from the audience through this seminar to give an opportunity to these professionals to take part in their organization. I assure you they will be an asset to your functioning. Now, coming back to the presentation, my presentation will be a PowerPoint presentation, and I now change over to the PowerPoint presentation. You may not see me on the screen, but I will be in the background. However, you will hear my audio. Okay, my PowerPoint presentation is for about 20 minutes or so, and I will be covering the entire logistics management in the Indian Air Force. The presentation is on as defined on the screen on various topics. I'll be touching shortly on the definition of what logistics stands for, logistic force drivers, supply chain philosophies, logistic echelons that are available in the Indian Air Force, inventory classification, inventory control techniques, fleet management, procurement management, enterprise-wise resource planning, distribution management system, warehousing and material handling, disposal, logistic challenges that we have, a short talk on RA versus RML, that is Revolution Military Affairs versus Revolution Military Logistics, before I conclude. No presentation on logistics is complete unless we go and review what logistics really stands for. The screen now shows you the definition of logistics as per military parlance. The art and science of creating and maintaining a military capability. It consists of the process of determining requirement, that is forecast, acquisition, that is procurement, distribution, that is distribution logistics, and maintenance of material before it is disposed of as scrap. So therefore, it covers the entire gamut of any organization's requirement in terms of material support. Now let's see what the corporate defines as per the International Council of Logistics Management. OEO USA defines the logistics as the process of planning, implementing, and controlling the efficient, cost-effective flow and storage of material, in-process inventory, finished goods, and related information flow from the point of origin to the point of consumption for the purpose of conforming to customer requirement. Here I would say difference between the two is, in military parlance, security of the country is paramount. Cost is the paramount criteria. However, in the corporate world, cost is very effectively to be managed for the organization to survive. So that is kind of the difference between the two that I can see. Now, logistics essentially means 5 pillars on which this entire edifice rests. And after the definition also, development, provisioning or forecasting, procurement management, warehousing, distribution logistics before it is disposed of. Disposal is basically converting waste into wealth. The components of logistics we have is ops logistics. A lot has been spoken about by the earlier two speakers, including the Vice Chief of Army Staff, maintenance logistics, and the welfare logistics. Now, welfare logistics essentially is to deal with the human beings which constitute the major component of the Indian Air Force. Their welfare, the welfare of our airmen, how they are clothed, how they are taken care of in extreme.
George sir, your voice is cracking.
Etc.
George sir, your voice is cracking. I'm not sure. It's not clear to us. So I'm not sure. Can you?
Anything that I do? Can I speak a bit more slower?
No, this now it is little better.
No, okay, I will speak a bit more slower. Maybe that will carry the properly.
Okay, right.
Okay, the logic force drivers that we have. A clearly defined role and a suitable organization structure to fulfill the same. A well-defined supply chain philosophy, responsive material planning and efficient procurement process, an effective ERP solution, modern warehousing and material handling equipment, efficient distribution management network, an efficient accounting and audit system, because this is public funds. It's cost to the exchequer. So every pie that is spent has to be audited and has to be efficiently accounted for. A suitable disposal mechanism, and of course, a planned approach HR management, that is the logistic professionals. Supply chain philosophy basically starts with the operational philosophy of the Indian Air Force. The philosophy that defined by ops is further married into the engineering philosophy, the mandate to form the supply chain philosophy. This supply chain philosophy ensures that the Air Force is always fighting fit to any contingencies under any circumstances. The echelon that we have more or less same like what the Army you have heard from the earlier speakers. We got mother depots. In mother depots, we have got equipment depots, which are pure storage depots. We got base depots, which are both carrying out repair of the components as well as they preserve, as well as they distribute. And we have got the AFLs, Air Force License Establishments. We have then the regional depots. Regional depots are the regional depots are what we call as air stores park. Now, each operational command has got a dedicated air stores park, which meets the requirement of all the operational units of that command. Now, the units project the requirement to the air stores park and meet their requirements regularly. The air stores park replenish their entry from the mother depots. Then we have got mini depots. Basically, mini depots are basically dedicated to one fleet operating from the same base. For example, if you have got a Mirage base and all the Mirages of the Air Force are located in one location, then you will have a dedicated depot looking after the entire Mirage fleet located at the Mirage base itself. And the last echelon is the logistics section, which is in the wing. Wings are basically the mother locations where all the operational units, like fighter squadrons, the helicopter squadrons, the transport squadrons, missile units, the radar units, the communication units, all of them operate from. Wing provides the entire logistics support to these formations to enhance their capability. Now, when I logistics section, an average sized wing would have about 4 to 5 logistic officers with about 200 personnel to take care of the entire logistic management of that wing. The inventory classification we follow in the Air Force is ABC, always better control, and it is based on two philosophies, that is cost and repair philosophy. And A class item would be high value, repairable, and beyond repair would be carried out by the repair depot. B class would be medium value, repairable, but it can be carried as unfit for use by the local unit. And C class are low value, non-repairable. However, if you see the corporate world, they do have ABC analysis, but it's based on annual usage value. They have a VD analysis based on maintenance value. There is an FSN analysis based on warehousing. There is an HMN analysis on value, and there is a runner repeater stranger concept based on consumption. So you would see that inventory classification is based on a number of philosophies, and it's up to the organization to select whichever best that they want. And in the Air Force, we have selected the ABC analysis, planning, cost and repair philosophy into one. Inventory levels, our inventories are stocked in the mother depots, in the ASPs, mini depots in cases dedicated to a fleet, the wing logistics section, and the user squadron meets its requirement across the counter through a store called as forward supply store. I will slightly dwell in detail into this. A user squadron, let's say a fighter gun, which is operating from that base. The forward supply store is located in the maintenance hangar of this particular squadron, and the technicians do not have to raise any vouchers or any paperwork at all. They just have to come to the forward supply store and meet the requirement on the counter without going through any administrative requirement of demanding the item or filling up any form. So that is what is the concept that is there for the user squadrons. The user squadrons are made as light as possible so that their requirements are met by the supporting base, and they can concentrate more on operations and they can concentrate more on their well-being as well as their training as well as their maintenance. The inventory control techniques that we have, I will not go into much of detail, but highlighted on the screen, there's something called as the maximum potential establishment. That is the planning of the equipment we held is based on the lead times plus the actual inventory. We've got stockage objectives, which is defined in number of months, and that takes off the physical stocks that the Air Force should have at its various locations. Then we have got a review action figure, again in expressed in number of months requirement. Now this is a level at which each component goes in for a review so that procurement is initiated and items are restocked. Then we have got a short stock figure, again expressed in months. So this is basically the warning level in case any of the earlier activities have not been completed or could not meet the time schedules, and warning levels have been touched and emergency procedure for procurement is initiated. And we also have a maintenance war reserve based on policy of each fleet to take care during operations. The provisioning philosophy that we have is inventory levels as a covered review action figure at the top. Inventory control techniques that we have, on an average, if I take a fighter squadron of the class of, let's say, a Su-30 MKI, have something like about 25,000 to 30,000 items in its inventory. Now, this is now broken down further into ARS side, that is automatic replenishment system. It are all basically classy stores, consumable stores. Then we have the rotables, which is about, the ARS should about 10% of this 25,000 lines to 30,000 lines. The rotables are high value items, they are repairable and they can be put back in use. They constitute under 20% of the inventory. And the non-ARS are non-repairables. They are definitely costlier items and they are not that fast moving as the ARS items. They constitute 20% of the inventory. The procurement methodology that we follow, we use imports from foreign countries from where we have sourced our weapon platforms. Indigenous private industries within the country. Our FOL, fuel lubricants, are sourced through the oil companies. We also source the inventory through public sector undertaking in the defense sector as well as in the civil. And a recent initiative that has been is the government e-marketplace, GEM. Now, GEM is basically a e-commerce platform that has been launched by the government of India to enable MSMEs to register into them and meet the requirement of armed forces and all central government employees. Now, instructions exist in the Air Force, wherein all the requirements of the Air Force, whether it is field wing, whether it is a command, or even at the air headquarters, every requirement of material has to be gone through the government e-marketplace. Here is where the industry can take advantage of doing commerce with the armed forces. What the industry has to do is get in touch with the GEM organization, the government e-marketplace organization, register their product, and you would find that e-commerce is being activated by the users, Army, Navy, and the Air Force. In the Air Force, I'm confident that this has gone in a big way, and almost all the requirements are now being converted through the GEM. Everything is just like you interact with, let's say, Amazon or Flipkart. Similarly, the armed forces or the Air Force would particularly go through the marketplace for meeting the requirement. Here is civil industry can take advantage of dealing with the armed forces. Now, material planning and procurement, we have got capital equipment, which is primarily procured through the MOD, through the DG acquisition, and we have got a secondary requirement, that is the revenue procurement, which is undertaken by the Armed Force Headquarters under delegated powers. Now, this constitutes both ex-abroad inventory as well as indigenous inventory. Revenue procurement, I will cover with the foreign OEMs that we have. The Air Force deals with the original equipment manufacturers or even the original aircraft manufacturers only. We don't get any subsidiary organizations trying to sell product which are not reliable. It would be appreciated that aviation has to be of very high standard of assurance. Only then can you buy it from an organization. And we do have product support guarantees in the main contract. For example, For Hawk, the company has guaranteed 3 years of product support as long as the Hawk aircraft is in operation in the Indian Air Force. The product support will go on. However, we face a lot of challenges because our inventory is quite old, right from the 60s technologies of MiG-21 to the current technologies of the Rafale. This is the spread in which we are dealing in. There is nearly 40 years of the flow of the technology into the country. Offers only limited stages in delivery schedule, and production lines closes if adequate orders do not exist. Now we have one of the biggest ERP package in the country, which is called as Integrated Management Online System. Is a pan-Indian network connecting all F4 stations on a single platform. It is one of the large ERPs, fully audit certified, and even our auditors, that is Principal Control Defense Accounts, is an active site for carrying out online audit. Our major advantage that we have because of the ERP is we have nearly 12 lakh lines of inventory consisting of fighters, transport, helicopters, missiles, communication equipment, you name it, and all the inventory that is there in the Air Force is on this platform. We have got the AG analysis allocation wizard, which is taking care of the highest priority of demands. Provisioning process boards are available, performance progress analysis, and global visibility of assets on need-to-know basis is ensured. That somebody is sitting at air headquarters can, with 100% assurance, indicate the components as is available in the field units. That's the kind of visibility that is ensured through EMONs. The distribution management system we have, we use road transport supply system. We have integrated road transport system. We use civil hire transports. We use speed post parcels. We have air delivery through IF aircraft. We have air delivery flights during operations, as well as we use the civil lines. We also have door-to-door delivery systems through civil courier companies. So here again, the civil industry can take any one of these actions, that is the ITS, where civil hired load carriers are taken, as well as the civil courier companies. The warehouse and material handling equipment that we have, as a flash on the screen, I will not go much detail as time is a constraint. Disposal, we do have a well-established disposal policy through the Metal Scrap Trading Corporation. Our entire scrap that is waste into wealth is through e-auction, and everything is carried out online itself. And for any successful logistic management, you have to have logistic professionals who are well-trained, who have attained specialization in various fields, who have got fleet experience. When I say fleet experience, people who have worked in the Mirages should preferably remain in the Mirages till there is a higher epsilon, so that their experience can be well utilized, and we ensure right man for the right job. And of course, in the civil world, I am told that logistic is a super specialization for the HR professionals. Now, the challenges that we face is diverse and varied inventory, so sourced from many countries, unique inventory management systems, different technologies, repair philosophies, MRO inventory, very complex, expensive inventory, erratic consumption trends. We have started new technologies of containerization, palletization, green packaging, and RF technology. Now, here is a concept which is called as Revolution Military Affairs. The US Armed Forces, through a study a decade ago, brought out that for the US Armed Forces to be combat ready in the 21st century, in the digital world, they have to go beyond the normal systems of evolution. They have to adopt a revolutionary system of changeover, which they termed it as Revolution Military Affairs. The RMA speaks further that if one has to succeed, they have to have revolution military logistics to support them. Here is where the operations and the logistics play a major role in ensuring the RMA is put in place. And this particular concept has been adopted by many air forces, and the Indian Air Force is on the process of looking into this concept and seeing how best it can be brought into our system. The 6 components that into RML is flashed on the screen. I will not go into much of details due to shortage of time. The focus is to make logisticians responsible for operations, as to see the operational conditions and design their supply chain to meet these requirements. That is what RML and RMA is talking about. Modernized distribution systems for the right support at the right time. Improve force restriction by enhancing agility of the strategic movement of supplies. Logistic command and control will reach back capabilities and face sustainable basis. I'm sure with the theater command and the logistic command coming into play, RML will find its place for introduction into our armed forces as well. Integration of gas supply chain as a two-way process from factory to foxhole and vice versa is so efficiently manage the flow of supplies is very essential. To conclude, logistic is resource intensive. It cannot be treated as an afterthought event. It has to be very much part of the operational thinking of any organization. No RME in future is possible without achieving RML. That means revolution military logistic has to be achieved before we think of achieving revolution military affairs. Cannot eliminate logistic discipline from. They say that logistics today in the civil has migrated from storerooms to boardrooms. That is the importance logistic professionals are gaining in civil world, and we have to have adequate logistic footprint so as to ensure that this is taken care of. That is all what I have to cover in this particular short introduction we had on logistics. It's a wide field, and my aim was to give a bird's eye view of what logistics in the Indian Air Force is all about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge, sir. Apologies for rushing you through because of the time constraint. But your exposition gave us the audience a very quick overview of what is happening in the logistics sector in the entire country, in the Indian Air Force. Now we'll go into a moderated discussion, and the discussion will be moderated by Major General Rohit Gupta, and Major General Rohit Gupta will be introduced by Sri Subham Jain. Over to you, Subham.
Thank you, sir. It's my privilege to welcome our moderator today, Major General Rohit Gupta. Sir is a combat arms officer, retired as Additional Director General Weapon and Equipment of Indian Army, and currently heads the Aerospace and Defence Business Vertical at the Primus Partners. The sir has commanded a counterinsurgency force in Jammu and Kashmir and has extensive counterinsurgency and high altitude operational experience in J&K and Ladakh, as well as mechanized operations. Sir was part of the team which established the United Nations Observer Mission in Sierra Leone, West Africa, and his contribution was recognized by the Chairman of Economic Community of West African States by the award of Ordre du Mono. He has also been conferred the award of Sena Medal, Chief of Army Staff Commendation, and Army Commander Northern Command Commendation. Sir is an alumni of Sri Ram College of Commerce and has done his MSc and MPhil in Defence and Strategic Studies. I welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Shubham. And Mr. Rambabu, thank you for this opportunity for being a moderator, in which 3 of the alumni in Operation Logistics in at least 2 of the services, the Army and the Air Force, are part of this. I have been silently hearing them and understanding the depth of knowledge that is there in all 3 of them. And they possibly had to constrain themselves to the reach of the topic. And the points that they brought out were phenomenal. I will, for the constraints of time, I will not go through what they have said in times of a summary. But I will say very specifically, as a nutshell, it is the difference of terrain and operational constraints which basically create a problem in operational logistics in the military as different to civilian logistic chain. The supply chain is very long. Large number of entities are involved in the monitoring, the demand, the transportation, in the storage, as well as the delivery. And monitoring is the issue which I will come to while we discuss this with our most revered panel that is over here. Basically, the saving and functional efficiency of the logistics is demanded. The reason is that with constraints in the budget and the need for modernization, as far as the defense budget goes, it looks at a whole expanse of logistics, and as well as capital procurement. So unless we economize and cut corners efficiently without the logistic being a constraint in operations, we cannot possibly meet optimum efficiency in delivery of logistics in the correct place. There was a mention of well before time and just in time. We will come to that. There is also a requirement, and this the White Chief referred to, of dovetailing the national logistic policy to the military logistics. And without the optimum usage of civilian resources, dovetailing them smoothly in the areas that they can in defense logistics, we possibly will not be able to reach optimum results of economizing on expenditures and efficiency of delivery. With this, I will come to an issue mentioned both by AVM George as well as by General B.V. Rao, which was on the issue of just-in-time versus well-in-time. We do have a problem of operational areas where just-in-time may just be a retrograde step, whereas in the other services, just-in-time may just be an optimum thing or a middle course between well before time and just-in-time. I will turn to you, General B.V. Rao, to further elaborate on what you were talking about and what implication does it have.
Yeah, I was saying that just-in-time is a requirement for optimizing storage space, costs, inventory holding, etc., which is a very efficient system in the civil today. But that may not suit the armed forces entirely, because we need to have it well in time. The man on ground needs to know that the item is already there. So I think if you see our stocking levels from the first and second world levels till today, we have also optimized our stocking levels, not reduced it to total zero stocks or something like that, but we have changed over by reducing the stock levels, by improving our infrastructure so that the disruptions are minimal, by increasing or having a better means of transportation so that we don't need to hold stocks so much on ground. All these are going on simultaneously within the armed forces. We are also removing the links. If an item has to reach the forward man, presently goes from the central ordnance depot to a field ordnance depot to a sub depot to the user unit. We are trying to see how we can directly deliver the item from the base depot to the forward areas, or more efficiently through the various network of courier service, postal service. There is something called the station wagon duty, where items meant for a particular station are all combined. With this kind of an efficiency, then the stocking levels on the forward areas need not be so much there. But all the same, well in time is still a requirement in the present day, till we reach some super efficiency or the civil market is flooded with items that we need. This also goes to the point that whatever item is there available readily in civil, I need not stock it. That's another way of doing it, or having items of military and civil origin are common. Right now, in many fields, we have military specifications and civil specification. That means the shoes that the army man wears is of different specification, and the same one does not exist in the civil area. So by all these methods, we are reducing the gap between the just-in-time and well-in-time logistics to achieve economy.
Thank you, General B.V. Rao. That was very good. You have exactly said that. Look, just-in-time may be a problem, and definitely a sort of a flexibility is required that you don't overstock in the forward areas. AVM George, I will turn to you. You have attained a lot of efficiency in the Air Force in this delivery method. How have you been able to do so? AVM George, is he on? AVM George, can you hear me?
Audio. Can you hear me?
Yes, AVM George, please go ahead.
Now, as far as the distribution system is concerned, first and foremost, the entire distribution system is tracked on the ERP platform that we have.
Yes.
So right from a component moment it leaves the mother depot, the user, I'm giving an example of a demand has risen for a MiG-21 item at a location, let's say Jamir, and he places a demand on the mother depot to the electronic medium. Within seconds, the mother depot receives the demand, and the mandate that has been given to the mother depot is within 8 hours of receiving the demand, the item is to be taken out, it is to be checked for its serviceability, it is to be packed, and it has to be dispatched by the fastest method that we have. And the user comes to know immediately that his component has started the mobility from the mother depot and would reach him in so many days' time. This system tells him that this is a timeline by which it is. So he prepares his maintenance philosophies accordingly. Now we are using speed post parcel. Any consignment which is less than 40 kilos by weight, the postal department collects this consignment from the mother depot and dispatch it through the speed post parcel straight to the Air Force location. The maximum time that the SPP takes anywhere in India is now come up to about 7 days. Earlier it used to be, when we said it was about 14-15 days, but we have continuously refined the system, and within 7 days, any consignment from any mother depot to any field unit all across the Indian subcontinent is ensured. And
thank you, AVM. Thank you, AVM George. That's very good. In short,
no, I have not
okay,
finished
please go ahead.
yet.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
We do use civil airlines, that is Air India and the other airlines to dispatch our consignments, and we also use in case the consignment is more than 40 kilos by weight, we hire a civil courier to ensure the transportation of the item from the mother depot or the breaker depot to the field location. I finished.
Excellent. I think that's a very good thing. Obviously, what you are doing has to be on a backbone of a software system, an integrated logistic platform. You have to have commonalities of CAT-POT numbers, category part numbers of the various devices, which are known to everybody. And you have to have a very efficient communication system to monitor what is the ground stock and as to when you want to push. I wish Gen Umamaheswar, can you please comment on the issue of the pull versus push system, and what is lacking in the or what is being developed in the Indian Army to facilitate the system? Gen Umamaheswar, please.
There are two different verticals. One is for formations which are located in peace locations, and the other one is frontline troops who are deployed on the LC or the LAC. So for those troops who are on the LC or LAC, it has to be well in time, and it has to be a push model. We don't have to wait for him to demand. And based on the requirements, based on the number of troops in a given geographic area, and based on the average of the last 3 years requirements, we know well in advance what is required. Hence, all the logistic requirements are pushed into that area well in time before the passes or the roads close. Whereas for those formations which are in the peace locations, it is based on demand and supply system. They demand a product, and the product is supplied to them in whatever form it is, whether it is resupply or it is replacement.
Thank you. That was very good, General Umamaheswar, on the difference between a peace supply mode and an operational mode in operational areas. Very well taken on that issue. General B.V. Rao, I would like you to come up because you have been handling this in the past. What are the issues related in the Army as compared to the other two forces, which is creating a problem in monitoring and pushing resources or being absolutely economical in the products put up, in the quantum of products put up to the person? What is the key problem?
Are you asking me about the management problem?
Yes, I'm asking you as
You're muted, Rohit. You're muted. All of a sudden, you got muted.
yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you can. We
Yes.
can hear you.
I want you to cover as to what is the problem in monitoring the stock levels and being able to do a push model effectively rather than the agency generating a demand, which at times happens. You two are muted. General Bivira, you're muted. I think somebody has done universal muting.
General Bivira, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So, while we just discussed the push and pull model, if you follow a push system, the best method is push system. But if you follow a push system, there is going to be wastage. There may be some unnecessary items required. Push system should be only resorted to the operational areas, as General Uma has mentioned. But in the other system, what happens is that we've been having a paper system of demand controlling, etc., in the sense that some items are freely available, some items are not available. If items are not available, they are called control stores in the army, and these are released by the general staff, that is the people who control the operations. They release the items. Now in the case of the army, what happens is that because of the size of the army, the sophistication may not be there like that of the Air Force, but our size is humongous. The number of units, subunits, which are demanding, placing the demands, these need to be collated and procured at the end of the stocking depot, that is the central ordnance depot, with an appropriate financial power. There is a time lag for procurement, the item coming, going back. All this is taking a lot of time, and there was no automation. Like AVM George just mentioned, the army has also gone in for a full automation now. It has just been put into place. The second phase is already in. It is called the CICP, managing all the 6 lakh items, wherein the demands are placed online, they are collated online, they are being procured using even the Integrated Defence Financial Advisor, who advises for the enhanced financial powers, is online. All the file system is now online, and these items, once procured, are, of course, they have to be moved physically to the forward areas. That also is being done efficiently, as I mentioned. Station-wise dispatch or a formation-wise dispatch, where they go to one central place and the bulk breaking takes place, and the individual units collect these items. So to that extent, we have streamlined the demand, procurement, and distribution items. I hope I got your question right, and this is what you wanted me to say.
Excellent, General B.V. Rao. I think the military has gone a long way to be able to register and to capture the various products, and just to the uninitiated to understand that there are almost 1 crore category part numbers of various parts and various components and various equipment in the Indian Army. To add to it is the Air Force and to the Navy. And all of this has to be put on one platform. Everybody has to be common. And please understand that if you take back your knowledge, there were no computers. So a person, there were problems in the complete list and with duplication of data, non-capture of data, etc. that existed. The Directorate of Standardization, MISO, in the Indian Army as well as in the Indian military, has been able to now be able to capture all the data, put it on a software program, which has the ability to talk to the person in front, be able to monitor the complete stock levels, and to push the stores there, procure, and then push in anticipation. So you can foresee the demand that would happen based on various factors that have taken place. I think that we have gone a very long way ahead in the logistic planning and execution and it keeps now pace with the operational structure. So let me get to the next stage. How is joint? What is the, we have this joint logistic node in Mumbai opened up, which is in addition to the one in Port Blair and the one in Guwahati. All this is with the fundamental thought process that integrated theater force command shall come into being, in which joint logistics has to be there to attain economy. I would like AVM George, go to AVM George, his thought process on this integrated logistics and how can we achieve it? What are the drawbacks and how can we achieve it? AVM George, please.
Okay, the joint concept that is currently getting evolved in India, the possible formation of the joint logistic command, which is going to have separate organizations like the JLN, is a concept wherein there is going to be a in meeting requirements of more than two or more than two services requirement. That means we will still have service week requirements which are unique to only one service to be handled by the service itself. However, if it is an item is common or a range is common to two services or more than two, should be a single agency looking after the entire requirement of. This is a move in the right direction. Economy of efforts is going to save resources. Save resources is basically going to put less load on the budget, and definitely the three armed forces are wholeheartedly working towards the joint operations as well as joint logistics to take care of this particular aspect.
Very good, AVM George. That was very, very educative. General BV Rao, you had a lot of experience as even the officiating MGO for a period of time. Would you like to comment on this issue of how we can achieve greater jointness in logistics and what are the problems?
Yeah, there is a committee of all the three services headed by the MGO equivalents of the Navy and Air Force. That is the Air Marshal of the materials, both in the Navy and Air Force. All of them meet every quarter and identify the problem areas that they are facing in their respective services, in which the other service can help. For example, I need a lot of help from the Air Force in servicing some helicopter parts, or the Air Force has got some requirement of repairing our Tatra vehicles, such kind of problems. And then we started sending our equipment to each other's depots and they are getting done, number one. Number two, as AVM George has brought, what are the common areas where we can collaborate and further improve our efficiency, both by way of generating volumes. For example, you want to procure a weather sensing equipment for the Air Force and the Army and the Navy. If you combine your demands together and place it, this creates a volume for the vendor also, and also we can get better quality stuff. You can save on the budget and other things. So all this quarterly meeting is now evolving into a regular affair conducted by the, coordinated by the Integrated Defence Staff, IDS. Right now we have a CDS under whom this is placed, and this jointness is moving forward. And I think that has also resulted into the establishment of these joint nodes, which will probably fructify and operate better when the joint, I mean the theatre commands come in. To that extent, this is a step forward. We are making slow and steady progress towards this. A lot of service-specific improvements in logistics have also taken place, and we are sharing with the other services. For example, in the Army, we have said, as I told you, there are specifications of items. Tire tube battery. Tire tube battery in the Army is made only according to the Army specifications. But we found that the civil manufacturer like Apollo Tires or JK Tires are making tires for the civil industry as well, and in much larger quantities. We said, why not have specifications common to both civil and Army? So the military specifications are adapting themselves to the civil specifications when they are specially superior to the military specifications, even if it's slightly costlier. Earlier, we had military specifications because we thought they were more rugged, but now in civil also we are having a very rugged system. That what we call in the army colloquial language, Sasta Majboot Tikau. That is the principle for procuring any item. So we are adapting. That means a lot of common inventory, military inventory range comes down, and we adapt to the civil inventory. And a lot of items which can be manufactured in the civil, which were either to manufactured in the ordnance factories, including ammunition and explosives, the clothing equipment, the high altitude equipment, all this is now being outsourced to the civil industry. Even our base workshops, which are overhauling our tanks, guns, the armored vehicles, all these are being corporatized and being given a long lease to the private industry. A big auto behemoths are there who can take on these, so that we reduce the public sector load and expose it to civil, which is mutually beneficial, in the sense that in war times they will have experience to suddenly boost up our capabilities. We may even go for exports. Like that, a lot of developments are taking place in the three services. Over to you, Rohit.
Thank you, General BV Rao. That was wonderful.
Rohit, can I just butt in for a minute?
Yes, please.
There is an audience question. I thought it might be relevant
Yes,
here.
I will take on the audience questions, please. Just flash them on. Just a couple of things we want to discuss. I'll take on the audience questions.
But I'm just butting in the sense of
Yes.
it might be relevant here. So I'll read out the question. You can take it, or you can take it later also. What are the implications of integration of logistics forces under our ensuing theater command scenario? If you want to take it, you can take it now or later also.
Okay, we'll take it on right now. And we'll throw this open to AVM George. Would you like to respond to this? The implications of theater integration of logistic forces under an ensuing theater command scenario. Part of it you already explained.
No, definitely the consolidation of requirements, if it is common to two or more than two service, is going to result in economy of efforts. You're going to be able to buy components at a better competitive price, and it will be much easier to distribute this to the various units under the command that is coming up. So therefore, the joint notes that are set in. For example, let me give you the example of the aviation turbine fuel. Now, the aviation turbine fuel, Air Force among the services is the largest user of ATF. That's a primary source of energy. So, as per the current philosophy which is now in place, the Air Force is going to sign the contract with the three oil companies based on competitive bidding. And once the contract is in place, it would be the privilege would be of the Army, Navy, and the Air Force to drop product from this particular contract to meet their respective requirements. So you have got an economy of quantity, that is the requirement of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. So quantities, if it's large, the competition is definitely much better. And once the price has been fixed, it is universal for all the three services. So what about standardization in prices? These are some of the big advantages of joint logistics coming into play.
Yes, thank you so very much. I would say that in case you're having integrated forces command, you have to have integrated logistics. Otherwise, it is not possible to have three independent logistic stream facing a joint command. It is not rational. But for that to happen, there are certain key issues. The key issue is that the name of and the nomenclature, as well as the catpot number, which is a 13-digit code of all the parts, has to be common, because you have to recognize you can't have a different size 17 spanner called something different in the Air Force and a size 17 spanner called something different in the Army. You have to have systems that talk to each other, because finally the logistics is managed in a joint manner by the CDS and his logistics echelons over there. He's going to be managing that kind of thing. So the systems of the Air Force, Army, and Air Force have to be capable of talking to each other. And when that happens, possibly the integrated logistics thing, not only for the integrated commands, also for the rest of the army in areas where it is possible, depending on the terrain conditions and the areas of deployment shall come into being. I hope that answers your question. We shall now shift to an interesting aspect, and I will go to General Umamaheswar for it. General Umamaheswar, the military has got a large volume of rakes that are there, and it impinges. Buying these rakes impinges a lot onto the capital budget, and we talked about the fact of economizing on this portion of logistics on the capital budget to make scope for modernization. As also, rakes are by and large, some parts of the rakes are by and large left idle for a long time. What is the solution you feel in the entire issue? Can the civil industry come in? Can we outsource, let out our rakes? What is your opinion on it?
Yeah, well, one of the important movement is always by rail, and rail involves using of wagons and coaches. So we are talking of an operational scenario and not a peacetime scenario. In an operational scenario, we require various kinds of wagons and coaches. That is covered wagons, coaches, SLR coaches, LLRMs, and of course the kitchen coaches. And there are two wagons which are distinct for the army requirement. These are bombs and MBWT. Now, MBWT means military bogie well type. So it's a well type of a wagon in which tanks and armored personnel carriers are carried. And obviously, civil cannot get into this because civilians do not have this kind of an equipment except construction equipment. The next one is flat-bedded bogie open military. It is these wagons which are used for transportation of vehicles. So even a civil vehicle, trucks can use this. The railways row, that is roll on, roll off, is based on this concept. Now, what happens is that the army and also the air force also requires the bogie open military in large numbers. And we cannot hold such a large inventory because stabling is a problem because there's not so much of space for stabling. So today, we are dependent on a certain bogie open military being held by the army. And the balance we take from the railways at the nick of the time. The railways don't have bogie open military. They have what is called BRNs. So BRNs have got end sections which are fixed. So these BRNs are sent to the railway workshops. The end sections are cut and made into an open wagon and they are used for operations. So instead of this kind of a technique, roll on, roll off is a very, very important concept. This concept should be advertised and in the civilian arena. The civilian commercial activities can only come onto this technique if it is useful and beneficial to them. It can be useful to them if the rail can move the trucks, say, between Mumbai and Delhi in a shorter time frame than what trucks can move. And they can move it only if they increase the speed of the freight trains, which is today average 25 kilometers per hour. So if that can be increased, then we can then go back to the civilian environment and say that like it happens in the aircraft, pooling of the aircraft, you can buy this bogie open military. It is not costly. It is not expensive at all. Hold them. And the railways, obviously, because of their inherent skill, they will have the capability to use them and move them, maintain them. So the civilians have, civilian entities have these bogie open military. They can have any number of them. They give it on hire to the railways and they get money for their investment. In times of operations, raising a national issue, these bogie open militaries of the civilian entities can be taken by the army for army movement. So there is a great opportunity waiting in the wings for the civilian entities to look into this roll-on, roll-off concept, thereby reducing the burden on the budgets of both the railway and the Ministry of Defence.
Excellent, General Umamaheswar. I must say, what you aptly said is that it is a wonderful opportunity, especially now with the liquefied oxygen tankers being on a roll-on, roll-off mode. I think this is being demonstrated in the times of a very sad eventuality, pandemic. But in normal course of events, this can be used extremely effectively by the industry to be able to move their products, and I think very aptly brought out. I will get on to another issue, for which I'll request first General B.V. Rao to come up, followed by AVM George. How can the question what the civil industry has asked is very simple. How can we assist in this complete logistic train? You explained to us the military logistic train, what are the problems, what are the constraints. Where all can we assist? General B.V. Rao did mention the issue of batteries and tires, of having a common kind of parameter which was equivalent to the civilians and being able to buy the market. What are the areas to be able to, they can do it, and how can they do it? General B.V. Rao.
Yeah, I think taking forward from where I have said, the many areas which we used to depend only on imports or on DPSUs and ordnance factories, a lot of opening up is taking place, and I will request the civilian counterparts to be on the lookout for these advertisements that are coming out in the government sites. I will go over them one by one. So, as I told you, corporatization of the base workshops, it's a huge opportunity for the civilian biggies to come into it. Secondly, a lot of inventory has been offloaded from the Ordnance Factory Board for production and supply by the civil industry. For example, the B vehicles, the Tata 2.5 tonners and the Ashok Leyland Stallion, which were being manufactured surprisingly on license by the Ordnance Factory Board, have now been taken off from the Ordnance Factory Board, and similar vehicles are going to be procured from the civil industry. So a lot of B vehicles, that means directly from the civil industry, will be procuring. Similarly, as you must have seen recently, there is a RFP for manufacture of ammunition explosives. Till now, complete ammunition explosives were either made by the OFP or imported. To start with, it was imports. Some were indigenized and yet and licensed by the OFB. But now we have got a third source. That is, we have offered it to our civilian counterparts, and a lot of these are being opened. I know of one or two industries which are producing in a small quantity and going to come up, called the solar industries, the premium industries. These are two companies which I know. Even Bharat Forge is there into these kind of things, producing detonators, primers, etc. Even our state units like the ECIL and ECIL was unable to supply our quantities, so we opened it for the civil industry. That is as far as ammunition explosives are concerned. Parachutes. The specialist equipment of parachutes were being made by Ordnance Factory Kanpur, which we thought our civilian counterparts can make. Even the work is on to offload it to the civil industry, but it takes a lot of time because these have to be tried out by our forces on ground to prove it, and then only can be done. That was about the parachutes. Even spares. What has happened is that the ordnance factories are outsourcing number of assemblies and sub-assemblies from the civil industry, but the services are procuring these assemblies and sub-assemblies from the ordnance factories. We call the civil industry as the OES to OEM. OES means original equipment supplier to the original equipment manufacturer. We were not allowed to procure items from the OES directly. For example, a spark plug. Earlier, probably I was taking only from the Mohanty because I bought the gypsy from them. But now I'm allowed to buy the spark plug directly from Miko or whoever is making. I give you an example of a very, very small part, which is very just for understanding. Similarly, big assemblies are also being made. Now we are going in for those. The next is import substitution, complete special clothing. We are carrying out trials, we are asking for tenders where civilian counterparts offer this equipment for trials during one winter, and if it is approved by the users, in the next winter we are procuring it in limited quantities, and the big orders are being placed. That I told you, 60% indigenization has already taken place. As far as logistic movement also, there are a number of presentations made by certain companies. I know of one or two like PVS Logistics and others who have understood our logistic mode of movement of stores from central ordnance depots to the forward depots and asked for presentation to move the logistics by themselves to perform our own inventory holding and increasing the speed. But that is still at the conceptual stage. Once that is done, probably even end-to-end logistics can be offloaded. Only thing apprehension in the minds of the military person is, will they withstand the vagaries of the war scenario? Meaning, will they be giving us assured logistic supplies during that time? In a similar manner, a lot of yeah, I think these are some of the items that I've spoken of, and we also speeded up our procurement like the Air Force has done. We are completely online through the GEM portal, as well as the CICP. Whatever item is not on GEM, we are procuring it through our own automated process, and that is how we are automated. I think the complete logistics, in fact, CILT origin itself is from the military, but I think I must admit they have taken off. Much ahead in the terms of automation and efficiencies, more because of item specific and of a specific specialized nature. We need to catch up with them, exploit their expertise, together synergize our efforts and have a very efficient logistics system in our armed forces with the help of our counterparts in the civil. Over to you, Rohit.
Thank you, General B.V. Rao. That was most enlightening. I think the opportunities have been highlighted very clearly, and as to how the civil industry can get into it. It's worth its word in gold as to what you have said. Then let me turn to AVM George. In your system, there would be slight differences. You did mention about the e-marketplace, and so did General B.V. Rao. What would you like to say on this issue?
Is it to me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, now GEM, I have already explained what GEM stands for.
Yes.
It is the government e-marketplace which is in place. It's an e-commerce platform, and any MSMEs or any buyer can register themselves in the GEM and carry out transactions with the armed forces in a big way. The government's drive is to make GEM a very, very successful e-platform where there is transparency and openness in every dealing that takes place there. That is point number one. Number two, the civil industry has got major opportunities under Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign to enter into areas which was hitherto not open to them. Let me give you an example of Su-30 MKI main wheel tires. These tires are being imported from Russia at very high cost. MRF has successfully indigenized it, and now we are meeting our entire requirement of Su-30 MKI main wheel tires through MRF. Similarly, the IL-76 tires, we are getting it retraded through a company in Coimbatore. So these are the areas which the civil industry can come in a big way, interact with the armed forces, interact with the Air Force, and the scope is enormous. There is a scarcity of inventory that is available in the Indian market, and if this opens up, as I brought out in my presentation, the lead times to get them from abroad is rather large, and there are a lot of uncertainties. We are paying very high price. So the Indian industry can come up to our requirements. There cannot be any better solution to have a just-in-time philosophy in our logistics management.
Thank you, AVM George.
Over to General.
Thank you. That was very good.
Rohit, how much time more we'll take?
We'll take another 5-6 minutes more, please. That be okay with you?
Yeah, it's okay with us. It's
okay. In case some questions come up, please let me know.
I'll let you know.
Yes. And I would like to get to the next aspect. And that is the MRLS, Manufactured Recommended List of Spares. The civil industry always has this little problem because with every procurement, especially of vehicles and things like that, they have to give a MRLS. It is to do with the logistics also, because these are spare parts. I would like General B.V. Rao to explain to them what the problem is and as to how the issue works. Please.
Yeah, this the system of MRLS comes in capital procurement when an item is procured for the first time, either from an Indian manufacturer or a foreign manufacturer. When, like for example, you brought a new vehicle and the army does not know that during its lifetime or immediate requirement of what would be the spares, etc. So the definition itself, manufacturer recommended list, that means the manufacturer himself recommends that there is a set of spares that you might require in the first 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and he gives you that list of spares and he quotes a price. But what happens is that when that is given to us, we either procure it put it at a central place or given it to some nodes and try and use them. But generally, what happens is that fails in the sense that the part that fails is not there in MRLS, or the one which is there in MRLS is very item does not fail at all, and that is wasted. And so that means the spare parts list, which is slow moving, becomes slow moving, or the slow moving becomes the fast moving. This poses a problem in our management and shifting to a smooth flow of shifting to routine maintenance, and that needs to be streamlined jointly by us and our trial teams to see that we get to a realistic method of the MRLS and the kind of kits, the almost set of kits or the tools that we can have as part of MRLS, so that these are efficiently maintained and the new vehicles do not fall off-road. Otherwise, it's a very sad story that when you have very costly equipment, falling off-road for small little things which are not there as part of MRLS, it's a sad story. So, but that lot of work is going on towards this, both during trials, and we have requested the manufacturers to be more deliberate in this, so that money is not wasted and the off-road state does not rise so high. Over to you, Rohit.
Excellent, General B.V. Rao. That was a very good insight. And in short, the manufacturer. Yes, 1 minute only. I would like last to go to General Umamaheswar in one issue, which is a major issue. General Umamaheswar, how would you like the transportation system to be changed to bring in the civil stream as to how they could assist in the transportation system? And I'm pointing toward the end-to-end delivery. Is it feasible? How is it feasible? And what changes would you like? General
Thank you very much. End-to-end delivery is feasible and it is advisable. There are two things. One is items which are procured within the country. End-to-end, we must go ahead. Items which are procured from abroad, end-to-end is not recommended because it is expensive. If an item is coming from abroad and it has to be delivered, for example, say in Silchar, once it crosses the ship's line, the complete port handling charges, internal transportation, internal insurance, all these things are to be paid in international currency, dollars, and it's very expensive. The quotes are very high. Hence, I do not recommend end-to-end solutions for imported equipment. As far as transportation revolution is concerned, principally there are three main modes. One is rail, one is air, and one is road. Rail, the Indian Railways is one of the most excellently well-organized outfit operationally. No requirement of doing any changes there. As far as the road is concerned, today the civilian field has got varieties of transportation equipment. They have better equipment than what Army or the Air Force or Navy can procure. Hence, we can go for the pooling of transport from the civil for most of our requirements. What is required is, like presently the rations are being procured on NCDEX and MCX, that is National Commodities Derivative Exchange and Multi-Commodity Exchange. If there is a transport exchange which is established by our SEBI or any of these organizations, then the transport would be very cheap and it will be economical. As far as the air is concerned, we have predominantly what we require is an aircraft which can carry loads and not people. People can be carried by civil aircraft which are available in plenty in our country. And these are not easily available. These have to be procured. These aircraft are mostly available with the foreign agencies. Hence, there is an agency at the international level which can procure such kind of an aircraft, and we use them for transportation of materials by air rather than loading our system with more amount of transport aircraft.
Thank you, General Umamaheswar. That was most
General
comprehensively,
Rohit, I would like to come in
comprehensively
on the
covered.
MRLS with some inputs.
Sorry, I didn't get it. Something in between.
General Rohit, I would like to come in with
Yes,
something
please.
on
AVM
MRLS.
George, AVM George, please go
earlier.
ahead. Please go ahead, AVM George.
Okay, in the Air Force, the MRLS that is there, indigenous MRLS that is recommended by the manufacturer, we normally go into a contract of MRLS for about 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
After that, the resupply is purely based on consumption trends. Those which are fast moving will be reordered. Those which are slow moving will be ordered in much reduced frequency, and those which are non-moving, we have got a system of having a buyback clause. In case you don't have this component moving for 5 years, then the manufacturer undertakes to buy this component back at the same price at which it has sold it to us. This is called the buyback clause. Can you imagine? Even for Mirages, we have got a buyback in the contract that any component that is not consumed by the Indian Air Force on a period of 5 years, Dassault Aviation will buy it back at the same price at which it had sold it to us. So this is what is the MRLS method by which we don't land up in excess inventory or non-moving inventory that is being followed in the Indian Air Force. Over to you, General.
Thank you, AVM George. We've got a question. I'll just in short answer it only. The impression I get that the Indian Armed Forces now own huge data sets in the domain of logistics. Is it time for harnessing AI and machine language in logistics? You're absolutely correct. We should now go to a computerized system which can think, assist the human being in anticipating the demand that will come based on past record of expenditure. Artificial intelligence and machine language actually that assist artificial intelligence is something that needs to be incorporated into our computer systems to anticipate, predict, and therefore automatedly generate demands as well as to how the motions shall take place. An excellent suggestion by you, by Mr. Jaya Simha. Thank you so very much. Now I'll go on to hand over to Mr. Ravibabu. I will not sum up for want of time. Thank you so very much. I have enjoyed being in this seminar of very elite personalities having in-depth knowledge of logistics. And I will highlight only one aspect what AVM George says. The wealth of knowledge of these officers, of not only these, a whole lot of Indian Army, Indian Air Force and Navy officers who have been there in the logistics can be very effectively utilized in terms of practical ground experience of handling a change management system. Thank you so very much. Mr. Ravibabu.
Thank you, Major General Rohit. I think one comment summarizes the overall audience response to the webinar. All speakers of the webinar are eminent in their respective fields. And I'm also getting credit, or we in CILT are getting credit, that one must congratulate the organizers to select the commendable and excellent speakers in the webinar. So this is what summarizes everybody, the response of the audience. And actually it is, as I started in my original this one, it was a black box for me at least, though I am from a Sainik school and have a lot of friends from armed forces. And it did open a small window to see further down. And as many civilians are attending this webinar, and then we'll be hosting it on the YouTube, I think both AVM George's and Major General Rohit's the request of civilians to engage armed forces in this specialized domain will be fulfilled somewhere down the line. Thank you very much. Sadiq, can we have the presentation back? With this, we close the webinar. Before I propose the formal vote of thanks, request Subham Jain to give formal vote of thanks. I thank every one of the speaker for giving their time, spending so much of energy and effort for complete review of what they are covering and how is it sufficient and where they should be compensating one another. That's thanks to every one of you. And as we continuously conduct these webinars, next webinar is on Suez Canal blockage, economic importance of canals and ICs and their safe navigation. This is a topic of pertinence of various logistical issues that are faced due to the Suez Canal blockage for around 10 days. So this will be on 29th of May, 2021. That's the next month, 29th. So with this, I conclude from my side the webinar, and now hand over the mic to Subham Jain to summarize the webinar and propose vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We bring to conclusion the 9th webinar of Hyderabad chapter of CILT, Logistics in Armed Forces, being ready for all scenarios. It was an exhilarating discussion which shed light on some of the aspects, expectations and requirements out of the supply chain network of Indian defense setup. Lieutenant General C.P. Mohanty, Vice Chief of Army Staff, inaugurated the proceedings of the webinar by highlighting the importance of reliability and robustness of logistics network for battle readiness. A well-tested supply chain network with coordination of different ministries ranging over land, air and sea is critical to the defense setup of the nation. Thank you, sir, for your time today. Our next speaker, distinguished Army veteran, Major General B.V. Rao, former Additional General, Equipment Management at Ministry of Defence. Sir elaborated on characteristics of defense services logistics like continuity of services, where we need backups of backups to ensure continuity. It is an elaborate network with numerous PSUs and organizations and different verticals to ensure support to frontline units. Army Service Corps, with its army supply depots, undertakes the responsibility of supplying ration, fuel and lubricants, vehicles, etc. Army Ordnance Corps undertakes the responsibility for ordnance and armaments, and electrical and mechanical engineers are responsible for repair and maintenance of army equipment. Sir, I express my gratitude for your contribution to the discussion and highlighting the lessons learned from the past. Transportation logistics network in defense was explained by Major General Umamaheswar, former Chief of Staff, Dakshin Bharat area, and ADG Operational Logistics and Movement. Starting from bulk loads over land, air, and sea to last mile supply by mules and porters is an intricate network which provides critical supplies and transportation services. Movement of men, food, fuel, armaments, and ammunition involve different modes of transportation and seldom easy to combine. Medical transportation also plays a critical role in battle readiness of a frontline unit. Thank you, sir, for your insights into this mammoth exercise, which is executed day in and day out. Next, we heard from Air Vice Marshal George, former Chief of Staff Logistics. Sir highlighted what logistics means in defense setup of a nation and the various aspects which constitute a comprehensive and reliable network. The logistics and transportation of men and material requires a hierarchy of supply depots and the most effective and efficient inventory management. Sir, I express my gratitude for your time today. Heartfelt gratitude to our moderator today, Major General Rohit Gupta, former ADG, Weapon and Equipment, for a very informative and lively discussion with the speakers. And sir, your deep dive into the logistics supply chain as compared to the civil logistics. Sir also touched upon the economy and efficiency aspects of supply chain and its significance in optimizing our defense expenditure. We also discussed the importance of integrated logistics for the upcoming Joint Theatre Command. The varied requirements of defense forces ranging from movement of men and material from centralized production centers to depots to last mile frontline warriors, often in remote and difficult terrain, requires a well-oiled, reliable machine with adequate fail-safe. With the face of war rapidly changing in recent times, the think tanks at the helm of affairs must foresee the logistic needs of armed forces. Involvement of private logistics experts in this exercise will be critical for a strong defense network in the country. I would like to thank CILT, particularly all the members of CILT Hyderabad, whose cooperation and support made this initiative possible. A special thank to Ravibabu sir for bringing us all together for this wonderful webinar. A warm thank you for the technical support team for bringing all the participants and viewers together through technology for a lively discussion. I express my gratitude to all our viewers for connecting with us through YouTube and for their participation through their queries. Thank you all. Stay safe. Jai Hind.